Okay.
Or I'll record mine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kundalini Hour with Alan Steinfeld, Kai Shanti, which is me. And today we have an awesome guest, Jon Bernie.
Hi.
Welcome, John. So excited
Thank
to
you.
have you and to hear your beautiful story. So I am going to read John's biography here, and then we'll get started. Jon Bernie, author of Ordinary Freedom and the Unbelievable Happiness of What Is a contemporary spiritual teacher who offers a compassionate, heart-centered approach to spiritual awakening. A profound enlightenment experience as a teenager ignited Jon's spiritual search. In his early 20s, he ordained as a monk in the lineage of Suzuki Roshi and spent the next 4 decades practicing and studying in the Zen, Theravada Buddhist, and Advaita traditions. Jon's most important mentors include Jean Klein, Robert Adams, and H.W.L. Poonja, also known as Papaji, Brother David Steindl-Rast, and he was formally asked to teach by Adyashanti in 2002. Jon is also an experienced healer and teacher of somatic embodiment with training in the Alexander technique, zero balancing, and the Qigong system of Professor Yu. He currently leads online classes and retreats and does intensive one-on-one work with individuals to facilitate deep emotional healing, spiritual awakening, and embodied realization. To find out more about Jon and his teachings, you can visit his website, which is jonbernie.org. So welcome.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you. Well, thank you.
I got through it.
Hi, and Alan. But for people who are looking for that, it's Jon. There's no H in John. And Bernie is B-E-R-N-I-E. People always misspell it, so I'm just letting people know in case they go looking for it.
Perfect. And it's also in the description of the video on my
cool.
channel, the link is.
So you call yourself a teacher, would you say, or a healer?
Other people do, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to help people, that's all. I've never really had an identity of being that, but apparently that's the role I find myself in, quite busy actually, so.
So you don't give yourself a title in that way, guru or anything like that?
Oh, no, but I think the energy and the intensity of what happens is probably very similar in a way to the traditional, maybe Shakti put background and Kundalini approach. That people have profound awakenings in the work, and the energy is pretty strong. And even the online satsangs with people all around the world are amazing that I've been doing almost every week. And we just had a retreat, and it's extraordinary.
What day do you do your online satsangs? Do you have
Saturdays, West Coast time from 11 to 1, and people can find that information on my website, jonbernie.org. And it's like $20, and it's so right now we're limiting to 100 people around the world. It's been amazing. So
you did satsangs, people ask you questions, and you get.
What we do is we sit. There's kind of a very fluid schedule where we sit. I might start with a silent sitting, a little guided meditation for people who need a little support like that. The energy sets up usually pretty quickly, often I would say instantly. And then I may give a short talk, and then people raise their hand and I work with them individually, which is really cool because people get to see the transformation with people, not to mention feel it themselves. So it's really a very intimate and beautiful community. And so many people around the world say, God, we can't meet people like you, and we can't afford to travel. And now with COVID, of course. So yeah, it's a really rich environment.
That's a huge gift, because I've been watching a lot of your videos, and wow, it seems like magic occurs when people sit in front of you, and to be able to do that online sounds like an amazing.
I told my people, my team, I said, look, if this works, I'll do it. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to do it. And I was amazed. Not only did it work, it worked amazingly well. So I've been very inspired by it.
It works in the sense you're able to transmit energy.
Oh yeah, people have had awakenings in these. It's incredible.
Wow.
And so many people who have, I attract for some reason a lot of people who've had spontaneous awakenings, a lot of young people.
That's a lot of what we're addressing the show towards, so that's great.
Oh, cool, great. Yeah, no, I have a lot. I meet them. I mean, even today I had a new person start with me, and and some of these, even 18 years old is far out. It's like, and I had it when I was 16. It happened for me, and I didn't know what happened to me for a good 4 years. So,
well, can you talk about what happened to you at 16?
Sure, but don't let me go on too long, because I could just.
Oh, no,
I could just go on forever.
before that, you were just a regular guy growing up.
Yeah,
in-
I was a concert violinist. I started pretty young, and was performing, and I was planning to go to Stanford Medical School, so I was on a kind of that track. And I was very science based. Didn't really have a religious background, but yet I had a very questioning mind, which is so important to have, right? And I went through this process of questioning what's the really what's the meaning, what's the purpose of life. And it led me to sit in my beanbag chair and face the wall until I discovered what it was. And I don't know how I knew to do that. I didn't know anything about meditation. I didn't know anything like that. A very amazing psychic that I met when I was 20, Anne Armstrong. I don't know if you ever heard of her, but she was quite extraordinary. When I met with her when I was 20, she said, "Oh, you had an enlightenment experience, and probably you had many lifetimes as a monk that set you up to know how to that allowed you to set it up this life for this to happen, because there's nothing in my life and background that would have supported that."
Did that resonate with you when she said that?
Oh, well, I didn't. It was we were in such a beautiful field of presence and light. It was just so. I think it was just really reassuring, because I didn't know. I thought maybe I was going crazy, which I think a lot of people are afraid of when they open and they don't have a reference for it.
What happened? You were looking at the wall, and what?
Oh,
happened?
I'll tell you. Yeah, I'll be happy to tell. So what happened, Alan, was that without going into the whole backstory, because there was a whole about a 4-month period before I did this, where I was really in this inner, just with myself. It wasn't based on anything I'd read or anybody I'd talked to. I was just questioning, what am I doing here? My life didn't feel like it had any meaning. And I was working so hard in school and with the music. And I just had this inner questioning that eventually led me to wanting, I should really give you some background on how that, I don't know if I should try to recreate the thinking process that led to it, but eventually I just had a sense that I had to sit and stare at the wall and not move until I discovered it. It really felt, I have to say, at that time, the energy behind it was like, I didn't know if I could go on if I didn't.
It sounds like Ramana Maharshi's story a bit, when he.
I know. Isn't that wild?
Our Buddha said, "I'm not leaving the tree."
Right.
Yeah. So I somehow sat down and I was going to stare at the wall, and I wasn't going to move until I think my parents went to sleep, and I closed my door of my bedroom and I sat in my beanbag chair and I just stared at the wall, and all of a sudden my arm started itching and I didn't scratch it, and I wanted to move and I didn't move. There was something in me that just knew to stay incredibly still.
Right.
And so what started happening was, and there were no drugs or anything involved like that. This was 1969, actually. I was staring at the wall, and all of a sudden there was almost like an undulation, almost like a breathing that I could see on the wall, and that got my attention. And not only that, but it was emanating light. And not only that, I could feel it. And so something in me was like, wow, this is cool. Right? Yeah, I was 16. This is cool. And so I just had this natural sense to follow it. I don't know how to say that, but something in me knew how to allow it to keep happening. Right. So the movement got bigger, the light got brighter, and the intensity, the feeling grew. And it was like, wow, it got growing stronger. And then it got so intense that I became absolutely terrified. It was almost as if I was in a sports car, a race car, and someone had nailed the gas pedal to the floor, and it was going to go faster and faster and faster, and it was going to go off a cliff, and I couldn't stop it. And I was absolutely terrified. And at that moment, this voice came to me, and I have no idea what that was. It just said, "Stay with your breathing."
Wow.
I'm not kidding.
Right.
And I thought, okay, whatever that means. And I did, right?
What choice do I have?
I did, and it worked. And it was like, and it got bigger, and then there was like an explosion.
What is that explosion? What is that?
It was like there was like this it was almost like a I mean, it was like, I said it was like a billion times orgasm or something. And it was as if I had merged with the sun.
Uh-huh. And
It
Wow.
was just this incredible bright light that was amazing. And I have no idea how long consciousness was there or whatever, but it came back into the room at some point, and it was almost as if the whole room was being sucked into me and then being blown out of me in sync with my breathing. It was
wow.
almost, it was
Wow.
intense. And my whole body started shaking, and I just started crying, weeping. And I looked over at the clock, and I can still see it, just like it was right there in my bedroom. And I'd been there 3 hours.
Wow.
And I felt at that moment that if I died, my life had been worth it.
Wow. But
And prior to the,
At 16, that's pretty mature for a 16-year-old.
you know, prior to that experience, my life felt disjointed and nothing made sense or connected. At that moment, I looked back and everything made sense.
Mhm.
And there was a sense of trajectory into the future. And that is still true to today. And whatever happened then is still has matured and deepened and is working in my work. I mean, it's the same thing.
Was that in a spirit? Did you have a sense like that was a spiritual path that suddenly you were on, or that those words weren't even?
I didn't know what that was at that point. I didn't really know, but I was naturally starting to be drawn to be interested in Eastern thought. So I went to the library and I found a book on, I think, Kundalini Yoga. I think it was the Yogic Aphorisms from Papaji or something like that. And I read it, and they were talking about the Kundalini. I thought, this is exactly what happened to me.
Right.
I read it and
Wow.
I go, oh,
So-
I understand this. This is what happened to me. And so I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm gonna become a monk. She goes, okay, honey. You know, it was like when I was in Sunday school at age 11, I was arguing with the Sunday school teacher about the existence of God, and I wasn't buying it because I was sort of a science empiricist. And so I came home from Sunday school. I said, Mom, I'm not going to Sunday school anymore. I'm too busy practicing the violin. Okay, honey. And so I decided at 11 that when I saw God, I'd believe it. It was like I became an agnostic at 11. So it was really, and I didn't understand that happened, and it has basically been guiding my life consciously ever since.
Has anything happened like that since, or lots of things?
Oh, I've had all kinds. Yes. 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 Well, I would say the reason that I emphasize, I've had many teachers and healers, trainers, all kinds of people, but the two significant relationships that I mentioned in the bio, teachers who I had significant shifts were with first Jean Klein,
Yes.
and secondly with Robert Adams in Sedona, actually.
Mhm.
And Robert was a close disciple of Ramana, as was Papaji, who invited me to come and be with him in India. And I spent about 6 weeks with him in '91, which was wonderful.
Oh, was
Total love
Papaji
fest.
actually with Ramana physically?
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
didn't
He
know
was.
that.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, and he used to read Robert Adams' transcripts, actually. And so with Jean, as I was mentioning earlier to you, a friend of mine had met him and thought friends of his who were seriously on the path, serious meditators, would be interested in meeting him. He seemed really very clear and clean. And
Yeah.
when I went to meet him, I did have a strong Kundalini experience the first time, but that didn't mean anything to me because I'd had tons of that, like in the monastery.
But he did have something. I
Wait.
never met him in person. I've seen videos of Jean and read. He had something. He had a presence that.
Oh, totally. Oh no, I didn't realize. Once I was with him, I thought, oh my goodness, he's the real thing.
Yes.
He's the real thing. And we became close. In fact, he had been a concert violinist, and we were going to play the Bach double violin concerto together. And I would go in to see him, and he would start singing the first part, and then I would come in with the second part. We'd sing it together. Then we'd crack up laughing. He was really great. He was so important for me. But what happened was I went to see him at the Sausalito Women's Club in north of here, San Francisco, just on the other side of the bay, on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And something happened in that it was a public event, and he was talking about presence and how it becomes permanent. And I didn't even raise my hand consciously, just went up. And I asked him,
Really?
yeah. And I asked him, how does it become permanent? And I don't know what happened at that moment, but he knew exactly what was going on with me. And it was like he took me to realms of light that I didn't, I can't even
Wow.
begin. And I was in a profoundly altered place for at least a few days afterwards. And what shifted after that, my understanding of spiritual practice and spirituality shifted 180 degrees at that point, where
Wow.
my spiritual life, my work, and my personal life became one thing.
Mm.
And there was no more effort to be in presence. That was gone. It was here all the time. So that was a major, major shift. And then I got close to him, and it was great. And for a number of years, and then eventually friends of mine suggested I go see Robert. I was going to be in Sedona, and I didn't know who he was. And they said, "Oh, you should go see Robert." I was friends back then with Byron Katie, and so I think we had a birthday party for her or something. And some friend said, "Oh, you're going to Sedona. You should meet Robert." And I said, "Well, who's Robert?" He says, "He's a American disciple of Ramana." I go, "Really? I didn't know he had a." So we ended up going, and I had probably one of the most. That was next to the first one, the most profound.
What happened with
What happened?
Robert?
Well, my friend and I went, and it was in somebody's beautiful home in Sedona with, gorgeous views of the Red Rock. And we brought our little back jacks to sit on the floor. And we got there like an hour early, and we put up our back jacks in the back of the room, my friend Lisa and I. And I just went into meditation right away, dropped into a very deep place. And I guess he came in at some point near the end, and it was like a tidal wave of love.
Mm.
And I opened my eyes, and I looked up, and I go, "What?" And it was amazing. And then what happened was, I think prior to that, there was some kind of very profound, deep sense of stopping, a profound, even deepening of expansion. I see this with my students all the time, and we work with it. And I think for a long time, I'd try to kind of blow through it, more Shakti, more meditation, all that. It didn't work. So I just gave up. I said, okay, whatever. And that night, I knew it was going to finish. I just felt it happening. And it was almost as if I was just going to go over a waterfall, and it was going to happen.
Mm.
And the way I described it then was, it was almost as if I was a dried up leaf underneath a magnifying glass in the sun, and I just burned completely free.
Beautiful.
And I went up afterwards, and I said, I am just so, he was up, and I went up and I said, "I'm so grateful to be in your presence." And he's with me. And so then somebody pulled me aside. He said, "What are you doing for breakfast tomorrow morning?" I said, "Well, nothing." "Well, Robert would really like you to join him for breakfast. Would you?" I said, "Sure." And so pretty soon my friend Lisa and I were invited to breakfast, lunch, dinner, all weekend.
Mm.
And then when I was leaving the end of the weekend, and we'd gone to another satsang, and we were having lunch at I think it was called a Mexican restaurant in Tlaquepaque in Sedona. And I said, "Robert, I'm going back to San Francisco." And he was quite sick at that point. He had Parkinson's and liver cancer. He couldn't speak very well. And he said, "Come back."
Beautiful.
So
Did you make it back to see him?
Yeah. So I came back to San Francisco, and I called a friend of mine who'd been really close with Poonja, Papaji. He'd been long before Gangaji, and those other people met him. And I called, I said, "Steve, listen, this is what happened." He said, "You got to go back. You got to go back. He could die." I said, "You're right." And I was in private practice then. And I thought, okay, I cleared my practice, cleared my schedule. And within a couple of weeks, I was back there. And I spent a couple of weeks and a lot of time with him. It was amazing and wonderful. And then I was about to leave again. And I went up to him at satsang, and I said, I'm going back to San Francisco." And he goes, "Why?"
Oh.
And I just felt his heart. And I put my hand on my heart. I said, "Robert," I said, "you will always be in my heart."
Wow.
So we talked on the phone a few times, and we wrote, and then he and I had another trip there, which I did go on, but he died before. And we went to his house, and Ramana's grandnephew was there paying his respects, and Nicole, his wife, was there. And the energy in the room where he had passed away was unbelievable. Wow. It was really something. But that was actually the experience with him. I was in a profound altered place for probably 6 months, 24/7. It was like I don't know if I could use this example. It was like I was stoned and having orgasm for 6 months,
Oh my God.
nonstop. It was like I was connected to radiant light everywhere all the time. And I totally got this thing of just wandering off somewhere, right?
Yes.
But maybe in India you can do that. But here, what am I gonna do? Like crawl in a culvert under the freeway? You know, that
No,
wouldn't
not
really
so
work.
nice.
But let's talk about that, because I
And I
know-
wrote to him. He wrote me back. He said, "You're free." So I have a letter. You know, it's just. And I thought, okay, well, but you know, the thing that's really interesting. I really want to share this with your listeners is that at that point I came up with ideas about what I thought it was, and those all eventually got blown away. So I just tell people, don't make any conclusions at all about what's happening because we really never know.
Well, did you tap into something that's always there for all of us, or did something come to you? Maybe there's no answer to this, but
There isn't. You're right. All I know is that what I've really learned along this path is that each of us have our own unique unfoldment. The essence of it is universal with the presence. That's universal for everybody. So everybody can feel that, connect to that, and so forth. But how it transforms an individual is completely unique. And so my job as a teacher, as I see mostly, is showing people how to follow their path, how to follow how it's working for them. And it's an amazing journey of discovery that I'm constantly learning more about all the time, and sharing what I'm learning. And so.
But do all those paths lead to the same place, or does each person have their own awakening that's unique? I mean, yes, it's unique to them, but
Well, I don't think there's any place called awakening that you end up, you know what I mean? Or any place called enlightenment. I think that awakening and living fully is really the purpose of life.
Right.
And that, in a way, that's why I titled my first book, Ordinary Freedom. It's like, the famous Zen ox herding pictures where you go up, the first part of the journey is you go up to the mountaintop and then you come back to the marketplace and then you resume your life. So, and there's many, what Robert said to me? It was great. I love this. He said, most people who become free, they're not gurus, they're not saints, they're not sages, they're not spiritual teachers or anything like that. They're just ordinary people living ordinary lives. And unless you were really open and tuned in, and unless you were close to them and spending time with them, you wouldn't know it. I thought, right on. Because we have this kind of, I don't know, celebrity idea about what it's supposed to turn out to be like, and that's not helpful. I mean, I have people who have had so many students who've awakened who are in the world professionally in many, many fields, and they're bringing that light and that love and that connectedness in whatever they're doing.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Could you just tell, when you say they've awakened, what's the signs that someone's awakened, for instance?
Well, that they are aware of awareness, that they are connected in awareness. I mean, there's obviously endless stages of that. That I don't think there's any end to that.
Right.
I find it just keeps. Yes, there's been so many so-called minor deepenings and expansions. I think it's just how it works.
I wanted to, going back a bit, I wanted to ask about, you said you had several Kundalini experiences at the Zen. That doesn't
sure. When I was a monk, it had nothing to do with, it's just, these things are going to happen regardless of whether you know about them or not. Right?
But how do they respond? Aren't you supposed to sit quite still and get hit with a stick?
Well, in the Zendo, the formal meditation hall in the monastery, one of the experiences I had, which was pretty intense, the Zendo, there was no heating in the monastery. It was very, very cold. It's in the Los Padres Mountains, and it was the winter, and it was like 28 degrees in the Zendo.
Oh my God.
We were wearing, long underwear and layers of, robes to be warm, and you're cross-legged, of course, with the robes wrapping you up.
That's below freezing. That's really cold.
It was cold. Well, probably the Zendo wasn't 28, but it was cold. And, I was meditating in a deep meditation, and I guess so much energy, I was used to a tremendous amount of energy going through my spine. This was normal for me. And so I was used to that. I didn't need to talk about it. I mean, I think a lot of these things were just kind of not uncommon meditation experiences for a lot of people. I think the grounding practice of Zen really helps people be able to sit with those things as they open up their channels and open up their meridians and things like that. So we don't really necessarily talk about it. I mean, if you meet with the abbot privately, you might discuss this with them, but it wasn't a problem for me, so I never discussed it. But what happened one time, and my friend Wendy said she thought it was the funniest thing she ever saw in her life, was that I guess I was sitting there and the energy was so strong moving through me that it threw me off the zafu right into the wall. And my head hit the wall just as they hit the bell.
Wow.
I don't know how that happened. And she thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever, because she could see in her peripheral vision. I was like 2 or 3 people down, and she saw me go and smash right into the wall. It was a divider, actually. And the thing is interesting was it was so cold, but my whole body was soaking wet in sweat.
Oh my God.
And I had to leave the Zendo because they had walking meditation, Kinhin at that point. I left the Zendo and went back to my cabin and got out of those wet long underwear, and I changed into a fresh pair of long underwear, soaking wet.
What was going on in your body, though? What was?
I wasn't even conscious when it happened. I mean, it woke me up. I woke up in the middle of flying in the air. It threw me right off the cushion.
Wow.
Wow.
I know that was one of the intense ones, but there were so many experiences where it was just like a fire hose of energy going through my whole. I'm used to that. I mean, I think once people open those channels that don't have those kinds of intense experiences so much, and they get integrated. Does that make sense?
Integrated in you, or does the energy?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Totally.
But you still feel the energy, though, right?
Well, the energy is everywhere all the time. I mean, I have more energy than I've ever had in my life, and I'm 67. You know what I mean? I'm almost 68. It's just like it's like you become more alive or something. It's wild.
But do you do any practices to keep that going?
Yes, I do. And I think my sense, and I know I shared it with Sajja, he agreed with me. I think most of the practices were invented by enlightened people for enlightened people, because that's when you really need them. They don't lead to enlightenment. That's a misunderstanding. Enlightenment's a natural flowering of the plant. Awakening, Kundalini, all those things are natural things that will just happen. A lot of the practices can kind of lubricate, the mechanics in a way to help it move easier. So yes, I think practices are great. I've been working with breathing practices. And of course I do so much meditation in my retreats and so forth with people, but yeah, I find it's.
Is there a particular breathing practice? I'm just curious.
I don't know if you've heard of James Nestor, but I love his new book called Breath.
My teacher keeps telling me to read that. Yes.
It's amazing.
Okay, I have to read it now.
It's such a great read. He's a journalist, lives in San Francisco also. And he's just, it's really a very engaging story. I couldn't put it down. And he has lots of breathing practices and really good instructions. And I got very excited about it. And I started working with them. And what was I going to tell you? My mind slipped. Anyway, yeah, I think it's it's kind of like the Joseph Campbell for breathing. He spent 10 years researching the effects, almost the scientific and medical effects of breathing. And so he's doing it more from a kind of very studied point of view rather than just spiritual. And I think that really helps people have a different perspective on it in a way for a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily be interested.
What's the name of the book?
I think it's called Breath.
It's Breathe. I think it's Breathe. Yeah.
By James Nestor, Nestor. I think it's a great book, and I think he's got great practices in there. People can play with those and experiment with those. I've been doing that, and so I'm always learning new things and discovering constantly.
Great. Wow.
And what's interesting is that my Qigong master, who died when I was 30, he was teaching me. He was quite powerful, as I was mentioning earlier, you guys. That some of the things he was trying to teach me, I didn't understand then. And now I think I'm beginning to understand. And some of these breathing practices and things I think are showing me what he was trying to show me could happen and would happen with the Qigong practices. So it's been fascinating. I think if people are not totally fascinated and interested, they're not practicing. What they're doing is they're trying to get an outcome. See, true practice, I even learned this as a violinist, true practice isn't about getting a result. Wanting to get a result is wanting to get a result. That gets in the way often of true practice. True practice is really opening to and listening and being available for what's happening. That's a lot of what I help people learn how to get out of their way of it happening. Does that make sense?
Isn't that happening every minute then? I mean, isn't that?
Of course it is. But what I mean is that practice is sort of the refinement of attention of how we're present with what's happening.
Right.
But awakening, I mean, awakening, even Suzuki Roshi said this, that awakening or enlightenment is the beginning, is the beginning of practice. Practice begins with that. People think, oh, I'm done. That's not true. Now you're starting. You're starting.
So you still meditate a lot, you're saying?
You know, the way it works now is just pretty, you know, I have a practice I do every morning that involves breathing and a meditation, and also I would say tuning into the one heart, one mind, and planting seeds in that. I think we'd call that prayer in the old way of saying it, but I do feel like when you're truly clear and connected in that space, we almost have a responsibility to seed the universal mind with our intention.
And also one more thing I would just
Can I
want to
say
add.
that? Is that okay to say that?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I think when you're working with people, at least for me, you have to be, I have to be so present with them and their whatever subtle feelings and movement and emotion.
Totally.
I've disappeared and I'm just with that person.
Exactly.
And that's practice, right?
Exactly. Oh, totally. Yeah. No, when I'm there, when I am actually sitting with people, there is no me and no them. None. That's not there. It's whatever's happening. And so if somebody's taking themselves to be a teacher or healer, they're already in the way. That's for sure. That's an identity that's just
right.
Oh, it's
So when you're working with people, like when you're sitting in a session and someone comes and sits before you, I know you don't, I have heard you use the word Shakti interchanged with presence.
Yeah. Well,
so
sure.
Do you consider that, like just in the terminology that we've been using, do you consider that a type of Shakti pot when people are sitting with you?
People tell me, many people who've been on the Bhakti or Bhakti path, I'm not sure how to say that properly, say that you said you're basically a Bhakti guru. You're just not, you're not doing it the old way or
What does
whatever.
that mean, Bhakti guru? Though?
I guess because they feel so much Shakti.
Devotion, love,
and
Bhakti,
also,
like love,
I think,
devotion.
yes, I think that there's, exactly, Kai, I think there's just this amazing amount, it's just infinite unconditional love that's here and acceptance. And I think people really appreciate that so much, that I'm not pretending to be some elevated human being. I'm just a normal human being like anybody else. I'm not perfect. I'm learning all the time. And yet at the same time, there's this extraordinary, glorious, ecstatic beingness that also is always here, right? So I'm helping people learn how to really live a balanced life of not just their spirituality, but also their human life and whatever they have to work on. So they're not in denial of what they may need to work on emotionally or psychologically or physically and so forth.
I love that, because then someone is not afraid to present to you their whole self.
That's right. So people are given total permission to really be honest, because that's the only thing that's going to work.
Yeah.
It's not right, wrong, good or bad. It's just honesty and availability and the humility of being able to be available for what we may have been avoiding in ourselves because of our trauma and our pain and conditioning and so forth.
And I can't say this to a spiritual teacher. I can't admit this to a spiritual teacher. I have to speak this way to a spiritual teacher.
I tell people that one of the greatest evolutions on the spiritual path is disillusionment with the path. That's an important step, where you can really begin to mature into realizing that, yes, it is happening with you. And I think one of the most important things that Jean provided from Jean Klein, and I think that I also play an important role for a lot of people, is when I'm sitting with them, when we're tuning in, to really acknowledge that, yes, they are having an authentic awakening rather than they are flipping out or deluded or in some kind of, imaginary fantasy world.
Right. But let's just, what comes to me as you're talking, and Kai in that place, like, let's say that's just like the level playing field, the awakened state. This is not our purpose for incarnation, but the platform for incarnation. Then what do you think we're here to do with the awakening?
Well, I think life is a mystery, quite frankly. And I am quite at ease in not knowing. And yet the meaning of my life really arose at that initial experience at 16 and continues to, I mean, I'm not saying I haven't had periods, I've had a lot of periods in my life where I was very disillusioned and very confused and lost. And the journey was a rough journey with a lot of setbacks and disappointments and very even catastrophic events in my life for people who know me well. And somehow this has allowed me to go through everything and actually become more deepened and more evolved in the process. And I really can honestly say that I think the further along you get on this path, the less you know, and hopefully you end up knowing nothing, and yet are totally at peace with that. And so I don't propagate beliefs. I'm really interested in having people become, to be able to see their beliefs, but as I jokingly used to say, it's okay to have beliefs as long as you don't believe them.
Exactly.
As long as you're not attached to them, because any attachment to a belief is literally a separate identity. That's what it is.
Right. No, that's good. Thank you for that.
Divine ignorance.
Yeah.
But you can't sort of say, oh, well, now I'm going to be divinely ignorant. That's not going to happen. No, it's more like when it happens. I remember with Jean, when it happened, it was like the burden of knowing literally had been lifted.
Yes.
And because I had, every book that there was, and my whole wall in my other room was filled with them, and I read every one of them. I read them as soon as they came out. I got them and read them instantly, right? And I remember saying to him when I met with him for the first time privately, I said, he goes, you don't need any intellectual understanding. You don't need any intellectual input. That's what I said. I know. I said, I can't. And we were just in the light together. I said, I can't. I said, if I read one line in a spiritual book, I fall asleep. And we both cracked up laughing. And then I said, I can't even read your books. And we cracked up laughing. And, but I left that retreat afterwards, and it was like I was floating on air. It was like I was weightless. I'm not kidding. And somehow knowing and needing to know is really what it is. It's quite simple. It's the need to feel secure.
Right.
That's all. It's just ego's need to feel like, am I going the right direction? Am I screwing up? Is this a waste of my time? Do I need to find a different path? All those kind of questions that people have. That those are very normal, natural, personal feelings. And I encourage people to feel them, express them, and allow them, but don't get caught in them.
So if you were, because Alan and I were just having this conversation earlier today, some very spiritual friends of mine, they, in that, awakening, coming into that awakening and feeling very secure with your, I guess it's an attachment to an awakening. You become very sure of your stance and your belief.
But the question, the ultimate question is, who is it that's so sure?
Right.
Yes. Who is it that's so sure?
The one who wants to be secure, the one who wants to know, but that's not freedom. Freedom doesn't have an identity. There's no self in freedom, but any kind of surety is all part of a self, personal self. There's no blame for that. It's fine. All that matters is that you can see it. All is that you go, oh, wow, I have a part of me that really believes this. That's okay to believe it. I believed it. It kept me on my cushion all those years.
Well, I don't think they see it. But
No, that's okay. Well, then that's a whole nother step that probably they will be forced to face this life or some other life. I do sometimes get those people. Usually when people eventually get to me, they've already gone over that step. But
or they wouldn't come to you otherwise, probably.
That's right.
Because they already know.
That's exactly right. So there's something, it magically vets people. I don't know how it happens. But once in a while, I get somebody who's on the cusp of that. And it's really interesting to interact with them and kind of have them look at this in a way they haven't maybe before. So not with judgment, no criticism, not, no comparison. It's just like, oh yeah, wow, wow, that is a kind of holding, isn't it? That is a kind of wanting to be what? Secure. And
sure. Because
as a
if
human
you
being,
don't know, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because if you don't know, it puts you in that place of the unknown, which can be very scary.
I tell people, if that one thing you're going to have to really begin to become more and more available for is insecurity.
Mm.
That insecurity.
I'm totally there this year. That's all me this year.
It's learning how to be available gently, with openness, and without any agenda, without any conclusions, without any resistance to the insecurity. And so a lot of what I'm helping people pay attention, because when I sit with them, I can feel when they're blocking. And I'll say, okay, did you notice that? And I go, oh. And all of a sudden, what was unconscious in terms of blocking the vulnerability, all of a sudden becomes conscious. And at that moment, deepening happens.
Yeah.
Not because they learned.
No, go ahead. We'll finish this thought. I mean, it was just
Yeah. So that's so practice is learning how to bring attention to whatever's in the way, because where you put attention, energy goes there instantly.
Right. No, I was just going to say, as you're talking and as being with you, as we're being with you, I get the sense of the flow that is coming through you. You know, I'm not saying it's like, it's not an effort to talk, but it's like the flow.
We could just sit here and groove, you know, we don't have to talk.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's just the flow, and
that's the real teaching. The teaching isn't
right.
It's a transmission of the embodiment, but it isn't even a transmission, because that's misleading. That makes it sound like it's going from point A to point B.
And it's not even an embodiment in a way.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that I got this when I was with Robert Adams in his living room. We were just sitting together for an hour or so in silence. I didn't have any questions. We were just in bliss. And at the end of the hour, I just put my hands up and I said, I'm just so grateful to be in your presence. And he put his hands up, he goes, it's my pleasure. And I realized, oh, it's mutual. So that we're all, when somebody is working with me in satsang and they get in touch with some fear or grief, and it moves and it shifts and it transmutes, and all of a sudden they're in spacious awareness, they're enlightening everybody, including me.
Right.
And people who are tuned in that way are like, whoa, this is amazing. And it is. And it's wonderful to be a part of that. I look forward to being in those.
Well, that's why we're doing this, because I think you're enlightening me and us and whoever.
Well, I just, when CJ told me about you guys, I thought, oh, wow, I look forward to meeting you. It sounds like it's going to be great. So,
that's awesome.
It's a pleasure,
so when you work with people like that, do you find that it sticks? Does it hold? Like if they come to that moment of just that pure awareness moment, or something is clear?
Even that idea that there's a place that it is an attainment idea. And I'm not judging that, but that's a very natural idea. You know, how it plays and how it shifts is an ongoing, undulating mystery that we keep surrendering to over and over and over again.
So there's somebody that,
but I will say this, just because I think I understand also another kind of question you're saying. Often people have profound awakening experiences, but it takes quite a while to see whether those really integrate. And they often don't. But sometimes what happens, and this is very tricky, sometimes ego grabs a hold of it and decides, yeah, I'm enlightened. Because when somebody makes that decision, that's not it. And they have power, though. There's power in awakening. And so they can maybe, what can I say, unskillfully, shall I say that, influence other people.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And that's why we've had some of the problems that we've had even today,
and
with people who have attained, let's just say, access to power. But I think with access to power comes great responsibility. And that's what I'm trying to teach, instead of pushing away of the human side, because if that happens, then the dark side of a human, the unprocessed material, may start acting out.
Right.
Oh, sure.
And does. And we have so many examples of this bad behaviors that happen. And so I think that's why I'm so inspired now, because I've seen this firsthand. I've had so many students who've really survived some serious trauma with teachers like that. And I have a deep commitment to helping them heal and get back in the saddle of the true path that they are really on.
Do you notice stuff for you sometimes where you come up against something, you go, wow, there's a little bit of an edge there for me?
Sure. Oh yeah, yeah.
What do you do with that then, if there's?
Tell the truth. I just have my feelings. I don't hide having feelings. Even when I'm sitting in front of a group, like I don't know who was working with me, but there was something about a father process that somebody was working on, and I ended up sharing a little bit about the miracle I went through with my own father at the age of 45, and we had had a very tumultuous relationship, and I had been severely injured by a bike injury, and he was forced to take care of me, which he really resented doing at that point. And a lot of the painful feelings came up that even when I was 16, where I remember that anyway, I had more skill, not to go into it too much, but let's just say I had a shift in my perspective of him, and that instantly we were in love with each other for the last 7 years of his life. And I
Wow.
took care of my mother and him at the end of their life. And it was amazing. And so why am I telling you this? Oh, because I think what's so important in my own experience and how I've helped countless people and still do is learning how to work with the emotional stuff. Because some of this trauma that some of us have been through, it lives in the tissue and the bone. And even though I'm not identified with this stuff, and it's not really a problem when it comes up, I just allow it to move. So I was working with a student at the retreat this last weekend, and we were working with the father thing. And somehow I just, I got done working. I just started crying.
Wow.
I got my tissue and I was fine. And then I was perfectly, it just was the emotion. There was no story. There was no problem. There was nothing. It
But
was
it's
just that
beautiful to
movement.
feel that. We're
Well, I
here.
think people really appreciate that they can be
Yes.
fully human. Very
Well,
important.
Yes.
that's what being awake is, I feel. I mean, what do I know? But it's feeling everyone's beauty and intensity
Yes.
and love. And
My dearest mentor for 47 years, Brother David Steindl-Rast. In fact, he and I just emailed yesterday. He's 94 years old, and we're still emailing. And he taught me back when I was in my early 30s, probably said the purpose of spirituality is to become fully human, not to transcend human.
yes,
And he is an embodiment of it. That's why the Dalai Lama seeks him out to be friends. And I have been so lucky to have him as an example.
What's his name?
Brother David Steindl-Rast. And I think his website or the gratefulness.org, he really teaches, gratefulness and opening of the heart. But he's very real. And we've spent a lot of time together. We've traveled together. We've lived together. And we've known each other for 47 years. And he's a real human being. You know what I mean?
Well, I appreciate you saying all this, because a lot of people who call themselves teachers feel they're above the human, and
No. I tell people, be very careful of that.
Thank you.
Be very careful.
Aren't most teachers that have a rather large following doing that? I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And yes, there's a lot of energy, and there can even be a lot of love, and it can be very, very compelling and seductive. But I just caution, people will find their way. The thing is that that's moving through them has nothing to do with that teacher, has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with the teachings. It's something that's happening in them. That's why they're drawn to these things, because it's already happening, maybe not on a conscious level, but that that seed has already germinated in them. And they don't know it yet.
That's the problem I had with Advaita, is like, oh, it's all conscious, and I feel these Advaita people don't feel, because
yeah, I don't. I'm not a card carrying anything.
Okay.
People say,
yeah,
well,
I see that.
People say, well, you were an ordained Buddhist monk. I go, yeah, that's
Right. Yeah.
I never, let's just say, well, maybe partially I did to some degree, but I woke up pretty quickly. But I didn't really buy it. You know what I mean? I didn't become a believer. I think you have to be careful if you become a believer, there's something you need to look at a little more deeply. Because freedom is not limited to relative beliefs.
Yes.
It's just not.
No,
I love that. I'm completely the opposite, where I'm very gullible.
Yeah.
And I just fall right into what anybody says.
Yeah,
I say,
so
oh, really? Okay.
Right. So that's beautiful that you're so open, but that also means you need to be
Careful.
Careful.
Yes.
You need to be more careful.
Yeah. So I think I'm being much more careful these days, and I'm just
I don't understand that. If she's open, then I don't know, I can't talk, but would feel everything, and you can feel what's off, right? Is
I
that?
know, but then that's where it comes in, where I need to learn to trust my inner self more than what that person is saying.
Yes. And also when you say trust your inner self, I would even go one step further and say, just don't turn it into a construct of meaning.
What do you mean by that?
Come up with a conclusion about it.
Oh, can you go further with that?
Give an example
Sure.
of that.
What?
Could you give an example of that?
It's not clicking. I'm probably not hearing it because it's
Okay,
hard
well,
for me to
we don't
hear it.
need to belabor it. It's really, maybe what might be more helpful is to say, when you're making a conclusion about anything, just notice if there's any kind of contraction or holding in your system.
Yes. Like my teacher says, flip-flopping.
Yeah.
If you're
So
flip-flopping, let it go.
it's okay to
Yeah.
have, it's okay to have a movement of thought, obviously, even a conclusion that's in a sense fluid,
Mhm.
but it's not going to ossify. It's not going to become rigid and held.
That's good.
Otherwise, we become our own worst enemy. We become our own worst, sort of fundamentalist in that sense. You know what I mean?
And we forget.
And we can't even see that that's happening. Yeah.
And there's a flow. Our conclusions, and I have them, stop the flow from
That's right.
moving.
So it's fine that you have conclusions. In fact, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you can see that.
Right.
That's all. Once you can start seeing it, they will be less and less and less in the way.
Right. Okay.
I can talk about, I can say things like past life or whatever, but I don't necessarily, even though I've had experiences that could very well have been that, I don't know how to explain them any other way, but do I have a belief about it? No, I don't.
Because we don't know.
Yeah, not one way or the other. I mean, I know people have profound psychic ability, and that's interesting. I have the awareness and sense, and what I tune in with is just the pure beingness. That's what's here for me to be aware of, very much. And then, of course, the skill as a healer and working with people and their emotional dynamics and how it all interplays energetically with their nervous system and their body and the process of opening and deepening. So it is a lot, actually. But
So when people come to you, they just sit with you. I mean, I'm guessing, and
privately in a private session, or you mean in this
yeah,
satsang?
like
Same
a
thing.
private session or something, and then
Satsang is the same. It's the same as a private. Yeah.
and you just sit with the person and you just see what arises.
Yeah, I talk to them. We just, we break the ice, and just get to know each other a little bit. And then I'll sit with them, and then it usually happens pretty quickly, if not instantly.
Something
Or people have already read the book or watched listen to the podcasts or videos, and they're already feeling it.
feeling, whatever.
I've had people say that it changed their life just listening to the podcast. So somehow or other, the energy gets transmitted even through that. I think I know how that works.
I feel like something just shifted just by me mentioning that to you.
There you go.
Yeah, I think
That's how it works. That's what I mean, telling the truth. Telling the truth is what liberates us, actually.
It looks like you let go of something, Kai.
I felt something.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how long I've been quote unquote working on this, because I had a Shaktipat guru that took me a really, really long time to come to, I don't know, to end it, I guess, in a way. It's even unclear for me now what to say, because I still love him.
I just feel sad when people get and I had them too when I left the Zen environment, that I had very limiting beliefs that I could see a lot of people had there. And fortunately, I was able to drop them eventually, because I could see they were really constricting how it was going for me. And something in me knew something wasn't right there. I didn't know what it was, so I moved on. And I just naturally moved on. And then it wasn't until I was introduced to Jean and had those shifts that I finally knew why I had been moving on. Because something in me knew what it was going to be, but I didn't even know that until it finally just hit me. And it was amazing. I remember that night. So.
And you didn't have trouble moving on. It was just a natural process.
Well, it was, I mean, you're in a community, people. It was like, I'm very social. I loved a lot of people. I felt there were, a lot of friends. So it's not that easy. I think I'm pretty strong person in some ways, and probably was able to do it. Some people maybe wouldn't be able. It'd be harder. But yeah, I've done it more than once. And it's okay. I think my path and my healing was my priority.
So you
So-
felt there was something limiting in that monastery experience. You didn't know what that was, but it wasn't the freedom. Is that
I didn't know. I just knew something was missing.
right?
And I guess whatever was moving in me and kept guiding me forward.
Mm. And now you don't feel like anything's missing because
Oh no, honestly, I'm at peace. Honestly, I'm profoundly fulfilled. And if I, God forbid, drop dead right now, nothing was left undone. And yet I have never been more inspired. I've never felt more alive. I've never been more amazed at the miracle of how this works. And to be a part of this with people all around the world is just, it's an honor, it's a privilege, a joy, and it's a miracle. And so I'm at the height of my life, actually, I think.
Beautiful.
If I can say that. Yeah, I mean,
Yes, you can say that.
let's just say it wasn't like that a lot of my life, but it's
You've arrived somewhere on the movie.
I don't know what it is. All I know is that it's, I'm very grateful and deeply moved by the process, and I'm learning and maturing as a human being all the time. I'm certainly not perfect by any means. I don't feel like I've arrived anywhere. I feel like I'm in the flow,
Right.
and I'm going with it. And I'm helping others to learn how to recognize the flow in themselves and to go with it.
Great.
That's my commitment.
If someone were to come to you, because I've had people comment on these Kundalini hours, and actually it's someone I've worked with because I work with people who's he's this one person in particular, but there are more people who are going through what they call Kundalini terror.
Oh yeah. I've had so many Kundalini, I still do. I have a lot of people who go through Kundalini sort of very difficult symptoms of integration and so forth. That can go on for a long time with people. And so I've worked with many of those people, and it's just each individual, depending on what's happening, there's something that isn't moving there probably in them, isn't shifting, isn't opening up.
Yeah. What's Kundalini Terror for you, Kai? I'm not sure what that means.
I'm kind of unclear as to what each person refers to as Kundalini terror.
Well, what did you mean by it?
Me?
No, Kai.
Oh, just someone that I've worked with personally that contacted me, but also that has commented on these, and I can see that he's still struggling. And there have been other people that have mentioned Kundalini terror. Now, until this year, I never experienced anything fearful with the Kundalini at all.
I didn't have that either, but when I sit with people, if I may, I feel it. And so usually I help them bring attention to whatever that unconscious resistance is in them that's going on.
I experienced terror this year.
Oh, okay.
After 20 some years, I can't even explain what happened. It felt like it was right after Shiva Ratri, where I was doing intense Shiva practices, and I get Devi Bhav. So then that's really a result of being with my guru. I think, I'm not sure, but where the Kali energy or the Shiva energy takes over the body.
Okay.
So that's been the way the energy works with me. So it's beyond anything I've ever felt. It was terror. I'm sure it was just my ego being ripped away, in reflection. But yeah, it was pure terror. I still get moments of it in the middle of the night.
Okay. So I'd have to sit with you and really tune in with you to get a sense of that, but I don't think we have the time here for that. But
I would love to do that, actually, to see if you have reflection on it, because nobody I've spoken to really seems to be able to comprehend the depth of it.
That's why I never think about any of this. I just tune in and find out what's going on there by tuning in.
I love that.
It was a resistance that usually creates something. I mean,
I think my ego was definitely resisting dying or something.
Yeah,
I mean, because Shiva was literally
true.
saying, no more Kai, only Shiva. Kai is dying. Okay.
That might be a little unsettling.
But also saying, don't worry, you're fine. Everything's okay. No, I'm not fine. I'm freaking.
Kind of a mixed message.
Well, if you
So,
believe that you're Kai, that's a mixed message.
No, I
Right?
get it. I mean, I totally get it, of course. But
and then I would
I don't
lay
think
there every night
if
and
you're
literally,
thinking about it, you're already, off the mark. I mean, I think it's,
yeah,
you just gotta, surrender to it.
yeah,
100%. That's all. You just have to, be literally ready to die. I think it's
yeah,
that simple.
yeah. I mean, I get a little PTSD. It's getting better when I think about it.
Well, the thing is, even when you hear things, and I just said it, you have to be ready to die. You can't get ready to die. But people say, I'm ready for it to happen. You don't know that. Let's just put it this way, when readiness is ready, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
Whether you like it or not, whether it blows your brains out or not, it's going to happen. Trust me. And if you're not ready, even if you think you are, it's
it's
not
not
going to
going to happen.
No.
There was no
So
stopping
don't
it.
worry.
There was
So don't worry about it.
absolutely no
About
stopping it. Right.
Just,
Don't worry about it.
Next time you're on the roller coaster that's going to fly off the grid, see what happens.
Well, that seems to be the thing. Most people with awakenings aren't expecting it. Like you sitting there looking at the wall, it's like, boom, another thing that they could never imagine just starts to awaken or come online.
All I knew is that I wanted to find the truth, or I wanted to find the meaning. And I knew to sit there and stare at the wall and what? How did I know that? And I didn't. And yet there was something about, I don't know, there was something moving in me that had clearly guiding me to do that.
Beautiful.
I don't think I'd be here today if that hadn't happened.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be.
No.
You mean in a body?
Yeah, I don't think I would have made it. No.
Oh.
It was suffering too much. Life was
Oh,
pretty hard.
yes, I agree. Without my awakening at 27, I would be dead.
No,
Yeah.
I don't. No, we are being guided. Everybody is being guided individually, in their very unique life. They're being guided, and our job is to find out how to tune into that and how to align with it and how to let it do it, because we aren't doing it. We think we're doing it. We're not doing it. That's not what we do. Play a part, but that's not it.
But the we who we really are, I think that's sort of, the shift that could happen in the spiritual culture is stop identifying, I'm not saying it's easy, with the individual we, the ego we, our I, and come into this bigger awakening. I mean, of the.
I think it's ongoing.
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing, ongoing, beautiful process. And the beautiful and I think it's a reason we have a life, that we have a human life, so that we can begin to see how it transforms our human life. Because if it isn't, it's not authentic, and it's not integrated. That is for sure.
That's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that the proof's in the pudding. And when people tell me they've been around for years and they see people who've come and how they've changed, they're going, it's amazing. I go, yeah, this works. That's why I'm doing it. It works. I don't understand how it works, but I guarantee you it works. I'm proof that it works.
Yeah.
So
And
my life is proof that it works.
Because you're witnessing it, you know that it works.
All the time. All the time. And I see other people finally learning, because our minds are in there going, oh, you're just, doubt comes in, and comparison and all this other kind of stuff comes in that people have, negative thinking or low self-esteem kinds of things. And it's easy to do that. And then when you're comparing yourself to others, what's that line I use at the radio? So comparing yourself to others is like self-crucifixion.
Boy, isn't it?
So we have to learn how to give ourselves loving kindness, and learn how to be compassionate, and learn how to be patient, and learn how to give ourselves permission, and learn how to ask for forgiveness. I teach in Hawaii every year pre-COVID. I teach a week-long retreat on the island of Molokai, which was the spiritual center of all the islands, and that's where all the kahunas, great spiritual masters, were trained there. And the indigenous people are still plugged in. And now that I've given that preamble, as usual, I forgot what I was going to tell you.
Go there
So what I learned from that culture and from that tradition is one of the things that I learned was the Ho'oponopono practice, which is Hugh Len, who's a wonderful teacher of it. You can see his YouTube videos. I think Dr. Hugh Len, he's a psychologist, but he's also obviously quite realized. but very real, not pretending not to be real, which I love about him. And it's just like 4 simple statements. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And I tell people that when you really, and that could sound very artificial, whatever, but if you begin to really deeply understand what that is, like when you say you're sorry, you're speaking to your true nature. You're really saying, I'm sorry, I'm unconscious. I'm sorry, I'm disconnected. I'm sorry, I was reactive or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. And he uses it whenever you're judging to do, he calls it doing the cleaning, which I love. He says, I have to do the cleaning all the time because humans by their very nature are judgmental. Right. And so you do that. So anytime you're judging yourself, and we're hard on ourselves, we are so hard on ourselves. And that's a problem. Because eventually we have to accept ourselves. And people
that's
say,
the hardest thing, isn't it?
But I'm never going to, maybe I'll never get enlightened, and I'm so worried I'm not going to get enlightened. We have these trips that we lay on ourselves about this stuff.
Right.
And so self-acceptance and then doing forgiveness work. These are practices that are very helpful to our beautiful human nature.
Right. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you so much. Wow.
Yeah.
What a joy, really.
Feels like a satsang to me,
It does.
After I lived in Sedona a bunch of, I used to go there a lot, and after Robert died, so I used to jokingly say, have vortex, we'll travel.
Yes, I think I'll be contacting you.
Oh, you're welcome, please.
I'd like to get some input on.
Sure.
Well, if anyone, how could people find you who's ever listening to contact you?
They just go to the website, jonbernie.org. I think you have it spelled out properly on your thing there.
Okay.
And whatever people want to find will be accessible. They can email my assistant, or, if they want to join an online satsang, there's one this Saturday. Those are things that are available.
Great.
I'm trying to make myself as available as possible because a lot of people want help and need it. And I'm interested in being of service as much as I can.
Do you think everything that's happening this year is
wow,
making more of this energy active?
All I can say about that is that thank goodness those of us who are on this path have this path, because we need it now more than ever.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how people are surviving without it.
Well, they are, but it's not easy. And there's so much turmoil, there's so much chaos, there's so much fear, there's so much divisiveness. We're literally living in mythic times.
Yes.
On some level. I mean, it's, and I think so that cultivating the light, so to speak, we need that. So I encourage people. That's why I'm busy. And I will continue to be as long as I can be. I mean, even Robert, he was funnier. He was so funny. He was quite sick, and he'd go to satsang. And he said, I would go to satsang even if I was on a stretcher.
Did he? Probably did too, did he?
I wasn't there if he did, but that's what he said. And he's so funny. He cracked me up so much.
Oh yeah, I knew Pamela Wilson was a student of his.
Yeah, she and I've met. I really love Pamela. I don't think we crossed paths. Oh, hi.
This is Lotus.
Hi.
Yes.
I don't think we crossed paths, but we did eventually cross paths and met and talked a few times, and she's great.
Right. She was a big student of Robert Adams. I never met him, but he sounds great.
Yeah,
Alan, are you live? Do you have any questions on your stream?
Well, on my stream, I actually didn't. I don't think my stream went through, but I'll repost this. So and I should go soon. It's getting late here, but
and I need to get ready. I'm going to have to go and work with private students pretty soon. So.
Okay.
But I have a few more minutes, and I have to.
You have a question from your stream there, Kai?
No, I actually only have one comment. John is doing an unmatched job at explaining everything. He really paints a vivid picture. Thank you all so much.
Oh, wow. Well, it is my great pleasure really to be here with you guys and meet you. And we're all in this together. Let's face it. That's what we have to learn right now. That's what we have to learn right now in this world. We are all in this together. That is the most important message to understand.
And you're such a beautiful example of that.
Oh, well, thank you. That touches.
I feel one with you. I just, it's beautiful. I feel like you could really understand me, which is like an amazing thing. I don't feel that with many people.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. Well, what a pleasure.
Thank
Bye.
you, John. And Lotus. Lotus, what a beautiful face that little girl. She's like angelic, Kai.
She's an angel. Oh my gosh,
Lotus
that
is
child
that
is an angel. She is.
Well, I just want to wish you both the best in every possible way on your journey and in your life.
Thank you.
I'm really grateful to be here with you, and it's been really enjoyable. And thank you so much.
Thank you, CJ, if you're watching.
Oh yeah, you, my buddy.
Thanks for being so open and vulnerable and available to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Really, I was so looking forward to it.
Feels really, really good. So yes.
Thank you.
You take great care.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.